The first thing I saw that morning was the lake. It was still half asleep, covered in a thin silver mist, the kind that floats just above the water like the world is holding its breath. I was standing at my kitchen window with both hands wrapped around a mug of coffee, watching the sunrise spread slowly across the surface. For the first time in years, I remember thinking, I am safe here. Not happy exactly. Happiness felt too loud for what I had. What I had was quieter, deeper, something I had earned, peace. After 38 years of working until my feet ached, after burying a husband too young, after raising a son alone, after losing my sister Ruth, after 4 years of being treated like a stranger by the child I had once given everything to, I had finally found a place where no one needed anything from me. Then I saw the moving truck. It was parked at the end of my driveway, its white box blocking the narrow gravel road like a warning sign. Behind it was a silver sedan. I knew that car immediately. You do not forget the car your daughter-in-law drives when she once parked it across your garage door during an argument, then smiled and told you she hadn't realized you needed to leave for work. My coffee cup was halfway to my mouth when I saw the driver's door open. For 1 second, my body forgot how to breathe. Then David stepped out. My son. The son I had not hugged in 4 years. He stood beside the car with his hands in his pockets, looking at my house the way a tired man looks at a locked door he is ashamed to knock on. Then Sandra got out, my daughter-in-law. She did not look ashamed. She looked prepared. And that, more than the truck, told me everything I needed to know. I set my coffee down very carefully on the counter. My hands were steady, which surprised me. My heart was not. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat, behind my ears, even in my fingertips. But I did not rush to the door. I did not cry. I did not whisper David's name like a prayer. I stood there and watched as another person climbed out of the back seat. A teenage girl, tall, thin, dark hair falling over one shoulder. She looked 15, maybe 16, and she stood beside the sedan with a backpack hanging from one arm and the defeated expression of a child who had been dragged into an adult plan she already knew was wrong. I had never seen her before. In 4 years, my son had apparently become a stepfather, and no one had thought I deserved to know. That was the moment something inside me went very still. Not cold exactly. Clear. There is a difference. Cold is when you stop feeling. Clear is when you finally understand what your feelings have been trying to tell you. And as I looked at that moving truck, at my son, at Sandra, at that unknown girl, and at the gravel driveway leading up to the house I had bought with my sister's inheritance, one thought rose inside me with perfect calm. That truck is not coming up this driveway. But to understand why I knew that, you need to understand what the 4 years before that morning had done to me. My son David and I were never one of those mothers and sons who called each other 3 times a day. He was independent from the beginning. When he was 8, he packed his own lunch because he said I never put enough mustard on his sandwiches. When he was 10, he learned to do laundry because he hated how I folded his shirts. When he was 11, his father died, and overnight, the 2 of us became a team neither of us had asked to join. I worked double shifts at the hospital. David learned to heat up soup. I came home exhausted and found him asleep over his homework at the kitchen table, pencil still in his hand. He was a good boy. Quiet, capable, too serious sometimes, but good. I was proud of raising him to stand on his own 2 feet. I just never imagined he would one day use that independence to walk away from me completely. He met Sandra when he was 36. She was 32, recently divorced, sharp-tongued, beautiful in a polished way, and confident enough to make everyone else seem uncertain. The first time David brought her to dinner, she shook my hand instead of hugging me and said, "I've heard so much about you." I remember thinking that was odd, because David had never been the kind of man to say so much about anyone. Still, I liked her at first. I truly did. She was funny, quick, direct. She made David sit up straighter. She teased him out of his quiet habits. And after years of watching him move through life as if he were apologizing for taking up space, I thought maybe Sandra was exactly what he needed. I was right that she would push him. I was wrong about where. The first real warning came at Christmas. I had cooked for 2 days. Turkey, stuffing, sweet potato casserole. cranberry sauce made from scratch, and the green bean dish David had loved since he was 7 years old. I had even bought a dairy-free dessert because Sandra had mentioned once, in passing, that cream sometimes bothered her stomach. She arrived 45 minutes late, took one look at the table, and said, "Oh, I already ate." I laughed because I thought she was joking. She was not. "I wasn't sure dinner would be ready on time," she said, taking off her coat. "And is there anything without dairy? I'm trying to be careful." I looked at the table, at the food, at my son, who suddenly became very interested in unwrapping a bottle of wine. Then I smiled. Of course I smiled. Women like me were raised to smile through humiliation and call it manners. "I have roasted vegetables," I said. Sandra smiled back as if she had won something. That was how it started. Small things. Small enough that if I repeated them out loud, I sounded petty. She answered questions I asked David. She corrected stories I told about his childhood, though she had not been there. She made plans with him for holidays, then informed me afterward as if I were a scheduling conflict. She said things like, "Margaret means well," in a tone that made kindness sound like a medical condition. And whenever I looked hurt, she tilted her head and said, "Oh, I didn't mean it that way." That sentence is a dangerous weapon in the hands of someone who always means it exactly that way. 14 months after they married, David called me on a Tuesday evening. I remember the day because I had just come home from the hospital and my shoes were still on. I was sitting on the edge of my bed when the phone rang. "Mom," he said. Something in his voice made me sit straighter. He sounded rehearsed. Not nervous. Rehearsed. "Sandra and I have been talking," he said. Those 7 words have ruined more relationships than people realize. He told me they needed space. He told me Sandra felt my involvement in their lives was unhealthy. That was the word. Unhealthy. I asked him what that meant. He said, "It just means we need some time." "How much time?" I asked. He was quiet. Then he said, "I don't know." That was the last real conversation we had for 4 years. At first, I fought the silence. I called. I left voicemails. I sent birthday cards. I mailed a Christmas ornament David had made in 3rd grade because I thought maybe holding something from his childhood would soften him. He never acknowledged it. Once, during the first year, I drove past their house. Just once. I told myself I only wanted to see if the porch light was on. I only wanted to know they were alive. I only wanted a glimpse of my son carrying groceries or taking out the trash or doing any ordinary thing that proved he still existed in the same world as Ivy did. But when I turned onto their street and saw Sandra's silver sedan in the driveway, shame flooded me so quickly I had to pull into a gas station parking lot 3 blocks away. I sat there for 20 minutes, both hands on the steering wheel, crying so hard I could not see. People talk about losing a child as the worst grief. They are right. But there is another kind of grief people rarely name. The grief of having a living child choose absence. No funeral, no casseroles, no neighbors whispering, "I'm so sorry." Just birthdays that pass, phone calls that go unanswered, a chair at Christmas that stays empty until you finally stop setting the table for 3. By the 2nd year, something in me gave way. Not my love, that never stopped. But the reaching stopped. Because every time I reached for David, I came back with less of myself, less dignity, less peace, less strength to get through the next day. So I found a therapist. I joined a book club where no one knew me as David's mother. I started walking every morning. I learned how to cook meals for one without making them feel like punishment. Slowly, painfully, I built a life around the hole instead of inside it. Then Ruth died. My sister Ruth was the only person left who remembered me before I became a wife, before I became a mother, before grief and responsibility carved my face into something older than my years. Ruth never married, never had children. She painted watercolors, kept too many houseplants alive, and sent me birthday cards with underlined jokes in them. When her attorney called, I thought there had been a mistake. Ruth had left me money, more than I expected, more than I knew what to do with. For several months, I did nothing with it. The money sat in an account while I walked through another kind of grief. Ruth's death was quieter than losing David, but in some ways cleaner. She had not chosen to leave me. Then one afternoon, I saw a listing for a house on a small private lake in northern Michigan. 3 bedrooms, a stone fireplace, a back porch facing the water, a kitchen window above the sink. Not grand, not luxurious, but solid, peaceful. Mine, the moment I saw it. Ruth would have loved it, so I bought it. Outright. No mortgage, no permission, no announcement. I told almost no one. My friend Carol knew because she helped me pack. My old neighbor Helen knew because she agreed to forward my mail. I did not post anything online because I have never had social media. I've never understood the need to turn private joy into public evidence. I moved in on a Thursday in early October. By Monday, I knew I had made the right decision. At the lake house, I slept through the night. I drank coffee on the porch. I read novels in the afternoon. I made soup in a blue pot Ruth had given me. I bought a thick cardigan from a little shop in town and wore it every morning like a uniform of survival. For the first time in years, I was not waiting for the phone to ring. Then, 3 weeks after I moved in, the silver sedan appeared, with a moving truck, and my son standing beside it like a man already halfway inside an apology. I walked to the front door and opened it before they reached the porch. David stopped. For one terrible second, I saw the little boy he had been. The boy with untied shoes and mustard on his shirt. The boy who used to crawl into my bed after nightmares and whisper, "Mom, are you awake?" Then he blinked, and he was a grown man again. "Mom," he said. "David," I said. I did not move toward him. That hurt, but I needed it to hurt. Some wounds are warnings. Sandra stepped around him with a smile already in place. "Margaret," she said, as if we had seen each other last week instead of 4 years ago. "I know this is sudden." I looked past her at the truck. "Yes," I said. "It is." David swallowed. "We should have called." "You should have," I said. Sandra gave a small laugh, the kind people use when they want to make your boundaries seem embarrassing. "We've been going through a really difficult time," she said. "David's company lost its main contract. Things got complicated very quickly. We had to let the lease go." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said. And I was. That is the part people like Sandra never understand. You can have compassion and still refuse to be used. Sandra looked over her shoulder at the truck. "We thought, since you have all this space, we could help each other." "Help each other how?" She smiled wider. It was the same smile from Christmas, the same smile that had sat across from my turkey and called it inconvenient. "Well," she said, "you're here alone. David is your son. We're family. It just makes sense." I looked at David. He would not meet my eyes. Then I looked at the girl by the car. "Who is she?" I asked. Sandra's smile faltered, only for a second. "That's Emma," she said. "My daughter. From my first marriage." I waited. Sandra added, "She's 15. I turned to David. "You have had a stepdaughter for 4 years," I said, "and no one thought to tell me?" His face tightened. "Mom," Sandra cut in. "We figured it would be easier to explain in person." "In person," I repeated. The moving truck idled behind them like an accusation. I looked at Sandra. "How long did you rent the truck for?" She blinked. "Just today." "And where were you planning to put everything?" There it was, the smallest pause, a crack in the performance. "Well, we thought we could talk through the arrangements once we got settled." "Settled," I said. David closed his eyes. Sandra's voice sharpened. "Margaret, we are not strangers. This is your son." "No," I said quietly. "He is my son. That is exactly why the truck stops there." The air changed. Sandra stared at me. David looked up. Even Emma, still standing by the car, lifted her head. I stepped onto the porch and pulled my cardigan tighter around me. "This is my home," I said. "I bought it with Ruth's inheritance. I live here alone by choice. No one has been invited to move in. No one will be moving in today. Sandra's face hardened under the smile. We're not trying to take over. You came with a moving truck. We had nowhere else to go. You had my phone number for 4 years. That landed. I saw it land on David first. His shoulders dropped. Sandra recovered faster. We didn't want to bother you. No, I said. You did not want me involved when I had nothing you needed. Her mouth opened. I raised one hand. Not loud, not angry, just enough. And before this conversation continues, the truck needs to leave. Sandra laughed once. It was a brittle sound. Margaret, let's not be dramatic. I am not being dramatic, I said. I am being clear. The truck leaves, then the three of you may come inside, have coffee, and talk to me like adults. But that truck does not come up my driveway, not 1 inch. David whispered, Sandra. She turned on him. What? Call them, he said. She stared at him as if he had betrayed her. Maybe he had. Or maybe, for the first time in a long time, he had simply stopped betraying himself. Sandra pulled out her phone and made the call. 10 minutes later, the moving truck backed away from the entrance to my driveway and disappeared down the road. I watched it go. Only then did I step aside. Come in, I said. Sandra walked past me without a word. David hesitated. For 1 second, I thought he might hug me. He did not. Emma came last. Up close, she looked younger than 15. Not in her face, but in the way she held her backpack against her body like a shield. Hi, she said. Hello, Emma, I said. There are cookies inside. Her eyes flickered with surprise. That broke my heart more than I expected. In the living room, Sandra took the sofa as if she were chairing a meeting. David sat beside her, elbows on knees, hands clasped. Emma chose the armchair nearest the window and curled one foot under herself, watching the lake as if it might explain how she had ended up there. I made coffee. I also put out cookies. Not for Sandra, not even for David. For the child who had clearly been brought along as emotional leverage and was old enough to know it. Sandra began talking before I sat down. She was good at talking. She told me about David's company, about the lost contract, about the rent, about the debts, about the stress, about how hard she had tried to hold everything together. Some of it was true. I could hear that. David looked exhausted in a way that could not be faked. His face had the gray undertone of a man who had been sleeping badly for months. His wedding ring looked loose on his finger. His shirt was clean but wrinkled at the collar. The crisis was real, but so was the manipulation. Both things can be true. When Sandra finally stopped, I folded my hands in my lap. I understand you're in trouble, I said. She nodded quickly, encouraged. And I am willing to help. David looked up. Sandra leaned forward. But help, I continued, will not look like what arrived at the end of my driveway this morning. Sandra's eyes narrowed. I turned to her. I need to ask you something, and I need an honest answer. She smiled again, but this time it did not reach her eyes. Of course. If I had bought a 1-bedroom condo in a bad neighborhood, would you be here? The room went silent. Outside, a bird moved through the trees. Sandra looked offended. That's not fair. It is very fair. We came because you're family. You remembered that I was family when I had 3 bedrooms and no mortgage. David flinched. I hated that he flinched. But I had spent 4 years bleeding quietly so other people would not feel uncomfortable. I was finished with that. You told my son my presence in his life was unhealthy, I said. You accepted 4 years of silence. You let birthdays pass, holidays pass. You let me become a stranger. And now you are sitting in my living room because you need something from me. Sandra's face flushed. I was protecting my marriage. No, I said. You were controlling access. David whispered, Mom. I turned to him and my voice softened. I love you, I said. That has never changed. But love does not require me to hand over my home because you are ashamed to ask for help properly. His eyes filled. Sandra looked away. Then Emma spoke, very quietly. She said you'd feel guilty. No one moved. I looked at Emma. She was staring at the lake, cheeks red, fingers twisting the sleeve of her hoodie. Sandra's voice snapped. Emma. Emma did not look at her. She did, the girl said. In the car. She said once you saw David, you'd feel guilty and let us stay. I told her showing up like this was wrong. Sandra stood. That is enough. No, I said. My voice was not loud, but Sandra stopped. I looked at the girl in my armchair. Thank you, Emma. Her mouth trembled once before she pressed it flat. There are moments that split a room open. That was one. The performance ended. Sandra sat down again, but differently now. Smaller, less polished. For the first time since I had known her, she looked less like a woman managing a situation and more like a woman who had run out of places to hide. David covered his face with both hands. I'm sorry, he said. Not to Sandra, not to the room, to me. The words were quiet, almost broken, and they did not fix anything. But they were the first true thing he had given me in 4 years. I let them sit between us. Then I said, here is what I can do. Sandra lifted her head. You cannot live here, I said. Not for a week, not until things get better. Not while you figure it out. This house will not become a temporary solution that slowly turns into a permanent problem. David nodded. I can help you find an apartment. I know someone at a property management company in Columbus. I can make a call today. I can also put you in touch with a small business attorney who helped one of my former coworkers restructure debt after her husband's company failed. David wiped his eyes. I can help with the deposit, I said. First month's rent if necessary. I will not hand over cash without documentation, and I will not be guilted, but I will help you rebuild. Sandra's mouth tightened, but she said nothing. And Emma, I said. The girl looked at me. This was not your fault. Her eyes dropped immediately. Children who are used as bargaining chips learn not to react when someone sees them. It makes being seen feel dangerous. I mean that, I said. She nodded once. David finally turned to Sandra. We should go, he said. Sandra laughed bitterly. Go where? To figure it out, he said. There was something new in his voice, not strength exactly, but the memory of it. They stayed for another 20 minutes. Not because there was more to say, but because leaving meant admitting the plan had failed. I packed cookies into a paper bag and handed them to Emma. Sandra looked embarrassed by that, which made me glad I had done it. At the door, David paused. I didn't know how to come back, he said. I looked at him. That is not the same as not knowing where I was. He nodded because he knew I was right. I'm sorry, he said again. I believe you, I said. But I will need more than sorry, he swallowed. I know. Sandra walked to the car first. Emma followed, then stopped and turned back. Your house is really pretty, she said. Thank you. The lake looks like a painting. My sister would have liked that, I said. Emma gave me the smallest smile. Then she got into the car. David was last. This time he did hug me. Carefully at first, like I was something fragile. Then harder, like he remembered I was not. I let myself hold him for 3 seconds longer than I should have. Then I stepped back, because I had spent 4 years learning that love without boundaries is not love. It is surrender. I stood in the driveway until the silver sedan disappeared around the bend. Then I went inside, closed the door, and locked it. Not because I was afraid, because it was mine to lock. That evening, I called the property attorney I had spoken to before moving in. Yes, I had spoken to one. 2 months earlier, before I ever packed a box, I had asked what it meant in Michigan to let someone stay in your home long enough to claim residency. Asked about guests, tenants, mail, documentation, and eviction. Not because I expected David to appear with a truck, but because 4 years of loss had taught me something valuable. Hope is not a legal strategy. The attorney listened carefully as I described what had happened. You handled it well, she said. You made the boundary clear before they entered. You did not allow belongings into the home. You documented the visit. That matters. After we hung up, I stood at the kitchen sink and looked at the lake. The water was dark now. Still, indifferent to everything human beings do in the name of family. For the first time that day, I cried. Not the way I had cried in the gas station parking lot years earlier. This was different. Not grief, release. Over the next few weeks, David called. At first, the calls were awkward. Short, careful, like two people walking across ice, listening for cracks. He told me they had found a short-term rental outside Columbus. He told me he had met with the attorney. He told me the business was not gone, only wounded. He told me Emma had started at a new school and hated it less than expected. He did not always mention Sandra. I did not ask. Then, 3 weeks after the truck appeared, I received a text from an unknown number. It was Sandra. The message said, "I know I owe you more than this. I don't know how to give it yet. I am working on it. I read it 3 times. Then I wrote back, then keep working. I am not your enemy, Sandra, but I am no longer available to be used." She did not respond. That was fine. Some truths need time to become livable. A month later, Emma sent me a photo. A sunrise over a narrow creek near Columbus. The water was muddy, the trees were bare. It was nothing like my lake, but she had seen it and thought of me. I printed the photo and put it on my refrigerator beside one of Ruth's old watercolors. Sometimes I look at those 2 pictures together and think about strange inheritances. Ruth left me money. David left me silence. Sandra left me caution. Emma, somehow, left me proof that honesty can come from the person you least expect. Winter came slowly, then all at once. The lake froze pale blue. The trees went bare. The porch chairs gathered snow along their arms. I still drank my coffee outside when the cold was not too cruel, wrapped in Ruth's old quilt, watching the world hold still. Some mornings I think about what would have happened if I had let the truck come up the driveway. I know exactly how it would have gone. Boxes in the guest room, then mail on the counter, then Sandra rearranging the kitchen, then David apologizing with his eyes but not his actions, then me walking softer in my own home, then 1 month becoming 6, then helping becoming obligation, then obligation becoming resentment, then peace becoming something I once had. I think about that version of myself, the version who might have opened the door wider because her son was standing there. The version who might have mistaken guilt for love. The version who would have abandoned herself just to be needed again. I feel sorry for her, and then I forgive her. Because I know why she almost existed, but she does not live here anymore. The woman who lives here now has white hair, tired hands, a sharp memory, and a deed with only her name on it. She loves her son. She hopes Sandra becomes honest enough to be kind. She sends Emma pictures of the lake sometimes. She misses Ruth every day, and she has learned that a door can do 2 things at once. It can open, and it can hold the line. I did not get my son back by letting him move in. I got the beginning of my son back by refusing to disappear inside his crisis. I did not punish Sandra. I simply stopped rewarding her certainty that I would sacrifice myself to keep the peace. And as for my lake house, it is still quiet, still mine, still standing at the edge of the water like a promise I finally kept to myself. This morning, the sunrise turned the frozen lake gold. I stood at the kitchen window with my coffee, the same way I had that day. No truck at the driveway, no silver sedan, no one asking for more than I was willing to give. Just the water, the trees, the silence, and me. I earned this peace, every inch of it, and I am not letting anyone move into it without an invitation.